Hello and welcome back to Not Your LGS. Today we're going to be talking about my thoughts of The Hunted post-world premiere and post-pre-release. I was one of the 900 lucky people that got to take part in this set's world premiere, hence the fancy playmat and extended art Arachne slipped through the cracks. Also, while I was in the Czech Republic for the pre-release, I got to meet the artist for Arachne Redback, Nathaniel Himwan, and I got him to sign a blown-up version of the card that he had for sale, which I thought was a really great souvenir. Also, while I was there, I picked up a Regicide in the Armory promo, which I've wanted for a very long time, but it was just kind of something that was always out of reach. I also picked up 2 copies of Leave No Witnesses in the rainbow foil, signed by their artist, which was another great thing. I wish I would have gotten the full playset. They had one available, but I just wanted to save my money for other souvenirs and stuff. I also met some great players that gave me some really fun tokens. I got a Worn Peace token from one of the locals that says, "Play the game, see the world. Welcome to Prague." I got a double-faced Rune Chant token from Sunflower Samurai. And I got a Rune Chant token from Poland that, of course, says, "Play the game, see the world, visit Poland." Some of my bigger polls that I'm just going to discuss now are Prowess of Agility. I got this in one of my packs for my pre-release, not the world premiere, unfortunately. But I decided to not build a Syndra deck just because I'm not super comfortable with Ninja. But what I ended up building and playing at both was Fang. I originally went to the world premiere wanting to build Arachne Web of Deceit, but I unfortunately didn't get any super great cards for the deck. I did, however, get in my world premiere a Long Whisker's Loyalty, and that's what pushed me to build Fang. Unfortunately, I ended up trading it away at the world premiere because at the time I didn't expect to want to build a Fang deck. But going to the pre-release as well and playing him there, I really kind of started to fall in love with him, even though my main attention was originally Arachne. So, I unfortunately don't have my full world premiere deck with me, but I do have my pre-release, seeing as I just did it yesterday. So I'm going to go through my deck and kind of talk about what I built and why I had it in the deck. Another thing I will say is Fang seemed to be a very popular hero at both the world premiere and pre-release. There were quite a few Fang decks. I got mirror matched a few times. And I think that's because in this set he had so much support in the commons compared to Syndra and Arachne. Both of them were very strong and very competitive in the limited format, but I feel like Fang just was able to outlast Arachne due to the fact that Arachne wanted him to discard his hand to give his cards bonuses, but in a 30-card format, you have to make every card count. So as you became these Agents of Chaos, you just weren't getting the payoff you would need them to be. So of course, I had Fang, my full art mark token, and a fealty token. I wasn't a super big fan of the half tokens just because I felt they were small, and because I couldn't put them in a sleeve, it just felt like they were out of place when I was using them. I was, of course, running 2 Obsidian Fire Veins. So in the pre-release, I was expecting to go against more Arachnes because a lot of people came to the event talking about wanting to build Arachne. So I had put in the Vow of Vengeance and the Heart of Vengeance. However, as people started opening packs and actually looking at their cards, only one person ended up building Arachne. So unfortunately, I never got to use those even though they were in my inventory. My main setup, however, going against other Fangs and Syndras, was the Blade Beckoner Helm, which gave a great defense against those daggers in both matchups, the Red Alert boots and the Red Alert gloves, which were great against Fang, and they sometimes had their moments against Syndra, but definitely not as much as Fang. And then I played the Code of Allegiance, which was a great common for the Draconic team, just because of Fang wanting to play so many Draconic cards. It wasn't really a limitation for him to be forced. Syndra, however, wanted to play multiple attacks. She wanted to play multiple Draconic attacks, but some of her Go Again commons were just plain ninja. Now, at the world premiere, I had a really good opening hand in my last game, and I threatened 18 damage turn 1. I did go on to win that match just because I was able to keep my opponent pinned down the entire game. And at pre-release, it was no different. I didn't get the opening hand to pin them down, but I did get later in the game where I was at 1 life and my opponent was at 2, and he just would be forced to block with everything and be forced to block with 2 cards on each of my daggers, knowing that I would have attack reactions to buff them, or at least give them Go Again to swing with the next one. So let's get right into the deck list. Rake Over the Coals was one of my favorite cards. Because it was a 0-drop instant, I was able to play it in place of attack reaction and give both my daggers the +1, and then save my bigger attack reaction for my second dagger, which really made it hard to predict how it was going to turn out, just because they would know I'd have a way to give it Go Again, but they didn't know how much I would be adding on to my first Obsidian Firevein. Cut from the Same Cloth was a great card in the Fang matchups. I wouldn't have really run it against Syndra, but against Fang and Arachne, it was great, which again, I didn't see a lot of in my pre-release, unfortunately. But it was one of the cheaper ways to mark an opponent that I was able to pull in my packs. Endure Devotion was absolutely great. It helped me get my Fang online with getting the 3 fealty tokens to make my daggers free more often than not, which I will say was the hardest part about my Fang deck, was consistently getting those fealty tokens on the board in the limited format. Without the super great cards that allowed me to get fealty tokens really cheap, and having so few of them when I did have them, really made it hard to get him online and keep him online. But once I had him online, I was running so many Draconic attack reactions and instants that I was never losing my fealty tokens. Tooth of the Dragon was a great way to mess with my opponent, because they, again, just like with Rake Over the Coals, they would know I have a Draconic card to give my Obsidian Firevein Go Again, but this one, giving the bonus to my next dagger, made it to where they would, of course, overblock the first one, but this would just buff my next one by 3 to make it even worse. Sizzling Steel, I don't think was my favorite attack reaction, but it definitely had its moments. I think I actually won with this on a chain link in my last game at pre-release, just because it was my second Obsidian Firevein attack, and it got the +4, which was all I needed to kill my opponent. Dynastic Dedication, I really liked all of the cards that had the ability where they cost 1 less for each Draconic chain link you control. And they all came in handy more often than not. This one specifically giving +3 to my daggers. Cut Deep was just a generic way to buff my daggers. And it was absolutely great. I definitely probably wouldn't run it in a constructed format, but in sealed it was really good. Another Sizzling Steel. Blistering Blade was another one kind of like Sizzling Steel, where it would buff my dagger and then give it an additional buff if it was the second Draconic Chain Link. The only difference is Blistering Blade was free, so I was able to do more with my turn. There were a few times in some games where I would have to pitch my Sizzling Steel just because Fealty wasn't online. But yeah. Sworn Vengeance, another great way to mark a hero. I didn't pull too many red ones, but the blues were good for pitch because they allowed me to play something like Sizzling Steel and both my daggers. Twist and Turn was a great card. I wish I would have gotten in at least a yellow or a red. Those would have been great. I actually don't remember if those come in yellow or red. I think if I remember correctly, they were one of the rares that only came in blue. Maybe. I could be wrong. I'm going to double check that. But when this hits a hero, you may attack with it an additional time, which was great. Making it to where my Obsidian Fire Veins could attack additional times was great once I had Fealty online. I unfortunately didn't get a Fire and Brimstone in my pre-release. I did get one in my world premiere, and that was a great attack reaction that costs less for each Draconic Chain Link you control. Point of engagement, allowing buffing my next dagger and all of my attacks that are attacking marked heroes was great. Just because even if I didn't hit them on the first dagger, my second dagger still gets the buff because they were marked. Tip off, I think I ran 2 of these, 1 yellow, 1 blue. Or maybe, I think I ran 2 blue, which we'll see later. But I ran them for the instant speed discard this to mark target opposing hero. And if they were already marked, I used it as a defense card or a pitch card. Knife Through Butter, absolutely great. Giving my attacks that are targeting marked heroes go again. Meant even if I couldn't play a Draconic card that turn on my Obsidian Fire Vein, it would still get the go again. And +4. Blessing of Vincere Kai. This was a great card because it set me up. I was usually, if I would get this in my hand and I didn't have to defend with it the turn before, I was trying to do both my daggers, and then with the last one having go again, I would play this for 0, so that on my next turn, my first dagger automatically attacked for 4, which came in handy so many times. My first dagger sometimes was hitting for like 9, just because I was able to give it +3 and then +4, and the +1 it gives itself and go again, just made it to where something that was originally going to hit for a 1 just absolutely shreds the opponent's hand. For the Emperor was one of the ways that I was trying to guarantee making Fealty tokens. There was a turn in pre-release where on the last turn, my opponent didn't have enough to block for it, but I would have threatened 19 damage because I had this in my arsenal, and I had swung with both Obsidian Fire Veins after buffing them. And the fact that this hits for 5 and automatically creates a Fealty just for attacking and not hitting made it a really good card in the deck. Imperial Intent was another one of those attack reactions that cost less for each Draconic Chain Link you control. It wasn't the best one because it only gave me +2, but on my first Draconic Chain Link, it was still free so that I could give it go again. Scar Tissue. This was one that if I had an extra Fealty, I was trying to make it Draconic just so that I would get the go again so I could attack with my second dagger and try to get another Fealty off of hitting the marked hero if that went through. Hunt of the Ends of Wraith is actually one I only got in the pre-release and not the world premiere. And And for 0, it was a great start of turn attack, because I would play it for 0, especially if my opponent was marked, and then it's automatically swinging for 4 with go again. Every time I drew it, I only got the 1, but every time I drew it, I did happen to have fealty going off, so it just ended up being Hunt to the Ends of Wraith, free Obsidian Fire Vein, Warrior attack reaction, free Obsidian Fire Vein, and if I had another one, Draconic attack reaction. There's one of my blue tip-offs. Like I said, this was either a pitch card or a discard for its instant speed effect. Another Sworn Vengeance, the red one, gave it plus 3, which was really good. Again, just any way to buff those daggers really came in handy. Just like Cut Deep. Hunt a Killer was another one that allowed me to mark on hit, which again was needed to get that fealty to go off. Which that was probably the hardest part about Fang. I don't know if I've already said this, but getting the fealty off just felt so hard to complete in the early game. But if you could make it to the late game and you had fealty, you were basically running the opponent out of cards each turn. Another Scar Tissue, Public Bounty for 1, it was a really good just mark target opposing hero, and the next time you attack a marked hero this turn, the attack gets +1. I wish I would have got one in red. I only got one in blue in my pre-release, but it was still really useful as either a pitch card to pay for basically my entire turn, or to get my hero marked, or my opposing hero marked. Another Scar Tissue, Searing Gaze. This was one that marks a hero if you're on Draconic Chainlink 2, which I ended up using quite often, just on my second Obsidian Fire Vein, just because I needed to be able to mark heroes again. Tip Off, blue, and then Brothers of Flame. This one I never actually got to use, and I quite often pitched it, just because on the turns when I actually had this in my hand, I had to block with it just to stay alive. But it does give a dagger +4, but you can only play it if it's on a Draconic Chainlink 2 or more. But I will say, if you had like a blue card in hand and you were paying for your turn, and you had a way to, like a Fire and Brimstone, to make it where you can attack with your daggers an additional time each, this would have been a great card. Just because even on your third dagger attack, you're giving it +4, and that's go again to make your fourth. Even if that only swings for 1, they've probably blocked with their entire hand by that point, just to try and stay in the game. So that was my pre-release deck. I had a lot of fun with it. Also, I won 2 of the 3 pre-release games I played. And from my winning packs, I actually got my first ever Command & Conquer in the alt art, which is absolutely beautiful. I absolutely loved it. I immediately put it in a hard sleeve just to keep it safe. The only problem is I don't actually have a plan for it yet. I don't have a deck that it would go in. But of course, if I do put it in a deck, I'll have to double sleeve it. But other than that, I think Fang is going to be a really strong hero, especially in non-limited formats, where you can actually choose every card that goes in the deck and make a solid plan each turn. Like I said, those turns with the... Oh, what is it? I'm sorry. I'm very forgetful. The Blessing of Vincer Kai, where I could set up the turn before, really made an impact, and there are a lot of warrior cards and generic cards that do stuff like that, where it sets you up for the next turn. And I think Fang is going to probably have a couple strategies where he does that, where he sets up the turn before for the next one, and just has these really big 18-20 damage turns, where he's attacking with at least both his Obsidian Fire Veins at least once, and one of them probably twice. Syndra was really good in all of her games. She was really good. She would always get me really low. I did lose to both the Syndras I went against. Or no. I lost to one Syndra at World Premiere, I lost to one at pre-release, and then I won against one. And I think the only reason I won against the Syndra is because I was able to pin her hand down to where she couldn't actually play cards on her turn. But in that last game, I was at 1 health, so if she had even been able to flick one dagger at me, I would have died, because there wasn't a great way to block flicks, especially not in the set. So if you were low on health and they started flicking daggers, you kind of knew it was over. Arachne, I just feel like Arachne Web of Deceit and Arachne Marionette were not good in the limited, just because they had so few cards in the deck already, with only being able to play 30. The fact that most of the demi-heroes wanted them to discard their cards instead of being able to use them to their full extent made it to where Arachne lagged behind in all of the games that I saw him. That's not to say he's not a strong hero. There were definitely people playing Arachne that were winning. But if you didn't get the good cards for the assassin, you just kind of didn't want to build Arachne. But those are my thoughts on the set so far. I had a great time playing at both the world premiere and pre-release. And I'm really excited to see how the set shapes up once it hits Blitz and CC after full release. But thank you for joining me today, and hope to see you in the next video.